Hey, what's up guys? How is it going? Today we're going to be recreating Sean Boswell's 2006 Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 9 drift car from the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. This was the car that Han gave to Sean to learn to drift in and also represent the shop that he ran, but eventually this car was totaled towards the end of the movie. As it turns out, this car was actually a Mitsubishi Evo 9 with an Evo 8 swapped front end, and obviously had a bunch of other accompanying modifications to allow it to drift as smoothly as possible. Anyways, today we're going to replicate this car in GTA 5 using the Karin Sultan RS. Now, to get this car, you're going to need to buy the original Sultan off of the Benny's website for $12,000, or you can steal it right off the street. After that, you're going to need to do the Sultan RS upgrade in Benny's for $795,000, and when all is said and done, the cost of the car, including the aesthetic modifications that I'll cover in this video, you're going to be spending about $1 million or so. So with that all out of the way, let's get right into this build. Alright boys, so getting right started with this replica. First off, in bumpers, for the front bumper here, I chose the Drift RS bumper with the canards, as you guys can see. This gives you a really good look because it has the carbon lip running along the bottom of the bumper in addition to having the canards. Although they are connected to each other, as you guys can see there, although that's not the best match, I still think the overall styling and the look of the lip and the canards make it a pretty good match in comparison to all the others. So Drift RS bumper and the canards is the way to go here for the front. For the rear bumper, because there's really no other option here and we can't run a rear exit exhaust, I think the other kind of best option here is the clean cut rear bumper. I think that's the closest match here, and then we will address the exhaust later on. Next step for the chassis, first off in the headlight trim, I chose to run none. A lot of people will run the custom eyebrows in an attempt to kind of make the headlights look smaller and a little bit closer to the style of the Evo headlights. You can run these if you want. In my opinion, they just look really awkward and it's very obvious like that they're fake. I think just to keep it a little bit cleaner, I would leave it off, but again, if you wanted to, you can run those eyebrows too. And then for the fog lights, for this I ran no fog lights, obviously. That's all handled. For the roof scoops, Sean's car didn't have any, so we're just going to leave those off. That's all good. For the doors here, we're going to leave those doors stock once again. And then for the roll cage here, there's kind of two main options that will give you the look of the cage in his car. I chose the padded dash dodger cage because it has a little bit less in terms of reinforcements. You are going to want to run the padded cage because Sean's car definitely did have padding. The roll cage in that car definitely was padded. So the padded dash dodger cage is what I chose because it has a little bit less bracing in the back of the car there. But you also could choose the padded full roll cage because this makes it look a little cleaner since it's integrated into the dashboard, although there is a lot more bracing in the back there. So kind of pick your poison here. Padded full roll cage or padded dash dodger cage, I think, is the definite way to go for this. So that's all good for the chassis. Next up, we have the engine, and first off for the engine block here, I chose the primary color valve covers as kind of like a forewarning. You guys don't really have to do anything to the engine if you don't want to, if you want to save a little bit of money, because in actuality, you really never see the engine bay of this car, but to make it look as close as possible to a 4G63 engine, I think the primary color valve covers are the way to go. And then for the cam cover itself, I choose the carbon cam belt cover, again, because I'm trying to get it to look somewhat close to an actual 4G63T engine. So I think for that, the carbon cam belt cover is the way to go. And then once again, a lot of Evos from the factory in the engine bay, you can see a triangulated strut brace. So to be true to that, I did add the triangulated strut brace. But again, all of this is optional if you guys wanted to save a bit of money. But yeah, that's everything there for the engine handled if you want to do that. For the exhaust, I think the closest and most faithful option here is the stock exhaust. Anything else just makes it look not really the cleanest, and it kind of makes it look like a drag car in my opinion. And to get as close as possible to kind of the Canon style muffler that was on the car in the movie, the stock exhaust is the way to go. That's all good. Next up for the fenders, we're just going to leave those stock. There weren't any add-ons, there weren't any crazy arches or anything like that, so just leave those stock. Next up for the grille, we're going to leave the grille stock as well so we can preserve that mesh. Anything else here is going to get rid of that and isn't really necessary, so stock grille I think is the way to go. Next up for the hood, we are going to run the vented hood. Although the vent itself, the style of the vent, doesn't look really close to the vent on the car in the movie, I still think the singular vent hood, as you guys can see here, is definitely the way to go. Anything else isn't going to get you as close, and it's going to either conflict with the livery or just totally kind of destroy the look. So the vented hood is going to get you as close as possible there. Although it adds the pins, I still think this is the closest match you're going to get. That's all good. Horn, up to you. The interior, first off for the trim here, going into trim design, we are going to leave it stock. There's no sun strip on Sean's car, so that's really easy. Next up, for the ornaments, obviously Sean's car didn't have any ornaments, so we're going to leave that off. For the dash here, I chose the semi-stripped interior because this gives you kind of a couple extra buttons in the interior in addition to the handbrake, which kind of makes sense since it's a drift car. It adds a little bit more than the street interior would. In addition, it kind of guts out the back, so I think to get a little bit closer to the style of the interior of the car in the movie, definitely I think the semi-stripped is the way to go. Anything else here I think is too much, and anything that's not this I think is too little, so this is probably the best match you're going to get. Next up for the dials here, I chose the tacho and the dash gauges to kind of match the look of all the add-on gauges that were in Sean's car. Pretty much where the radio would be, they added a bunch of extra gauges for like boost and all that stuff. So I think to get as close as possible to that aesthetic here in GTA, the tacho and the dash gauges is the way to go. It's going to add on that tack, obviously over the original tack with the shift light, which is really cool, in addition to the gauges over on the left above the glove box. So this is definitely, I think, the closest match in terms of the looks. Then for doors, we're going to leave those stock doors. As you guys can see, no door cards or anything like that. For the seats here, I choose the ballistic fiber tuner seats. Either these or the painted tuner seats are the way to go here because they are going to give you the look of the green Takata harnesses. In addition, the styling of the seats themselves is very close to the recars that were on the car in the movie. So once again, either the painted tuners or the ballistic fiber tuners are the way to go. That's all good. Next up for the steering wheel, by far the closest match you can get in GTA is the Apex Basic wheel, so definitely run this for the steering wheel. That's all good. And then for the light color, there's kind of two options here. So the option I chose to kind of match with the primary color of the car and also make the gauges look a little cleaner and a little bit more discreet, I chose Torino Red. Other than that, you could choose the Sunrise Orange to get a little bit closer to the actual OEM gauges in these Mitsubishi Evos. You could choose these, but it kind of looks awkward because it colors the dash gauges orange as well. Didn't really think that looked the best in my opinion, so to kind of get close to that color and also make everything look a little bit more in sync, the Torino Red is what I chose, but again, Sunrise Orange is the other good option. So that's all good there. That's all done for the interior. Next up for lights here, I chose the stock headlights, as you guys can see. Pretty simple. And then since Sean's car didn't have any neons, I just left the neons off. So that's all good. And then next up for the livery, obviously the most accurate choice here is the Street Drifter livery. Although it doesn't have nearly as many graphics as the APR Evo on the car in the movie did, the Street Drifter still is obviously a direct reference to that car, so definitely run this. Then next up, loss and theft, that's up to you. For the plates here, for the license plate, I choose the blue and white 3 plate here. If you wanted to make a custom plate, I will have a picture of the actual plate that was used on the car, the Japanese plate. To get as close as possible to the styling of a Japanese plate, I think the blue and white 3 is the way to go. And eventually, when you're able to make custom plates, you can obviously make one to emulate what's shown on screen right now. So that's all good. That's all done. Next up for the respray, this is really simple. To get the look of the really bright red that was used on the APR Evo that they built for the movie, you're going to go with a classic Torino Red, as you guys can see here. By far the brightest shade of red that you can get in GTA, so I think this is definitely the closest match there. So primary color is a classic Torino Red, in addition to the secondary color is also a classic Torino Red. Really simple paint scheme there, so that's all good. Next up for the trim color here, we're going to run a graphite trim color, as you guys can see. This is going to color the kind of padding on the roll cage in addition to the seats themselves. So I think to get as close as possible to the look of the black seats, obviously, we really can't do anything about the padding. In reality, the cage in the car was black and the padding was red. We really can't achieve that look in GTA, but to get the closest match for the seats, the graphite color here is the way to go. That's all good. Next up for the roof, we're going to leave the stock roof because the movie car also had a stock roof. So that's all good there. For the skirts here, we're going to leave the stock skirts. There's no mud flaps or any extensions there, so just leave them stock. That's all handled. Next up for the spoiler, I choose the Carbon Wing Type 2 here. I think this really closely matches in terms of the height and also the width of the wing that was on the car in the movie. I think the Type 2 is definitely the way to go. If you wanted something a little bit smaller, the Carbon Wing is another option. Pretty closely matches in terms of style, but again, I don't think it matches the dimensions of the wing on the car in the movie. So to get closer to that, the Carbon Wing Type 2 is definitely the way to go. So yeah, that's what I chose for the spoiler. For the suspension here, to kind of give it a little bit of a cleaner look and kind of a more drift style look, I chose the competition suspension, as you guys can see. So that's all good. Transmission, turbo, that's up to you. And then next up for the wheels, there's really only one definitive choice that I went with here. So for wheel type, we're going to go into the sports category. We're going to go into the stock rims so we can paint them. And I think the Deep 5 rims are probably the most faithful match to the rims that were on the car in the movie. They have the look of the kind of curved spokes that match the barrel outside, and the barrel itself is also chrome. So I think this is probably the most faithful match to the rims that were on the car in the movie by far. So definitely the Deep 5 rims in the sports category is the best match here. And then next up for the paint, for the wheel color here, we're going to choose a black steel. Although it doesn't actually look black, it's actually kind of a darker gray. I still think this is the closest match you can get to the shade of gray that was painted onto the rims for the car in the movie. So yeah, black steel for the rims there. And then moving back out for tires here, for the tire design, we're going to leave the stock tires. Then for tire enhancements, if you run to the LS car meet, you can put on low grips on this car, which is actually a really good option if you want to drift it. The Karin Sultan RS is one of the better all-wheel drive drift cars in the game, so if you want to drift it like a proper Tokyo drift car, you could throw on the low grips and it would drift great. But yeah, next up for tire smoke, you can just leave the white tire smoke, as you guys can see. And then back up here to the windows, and for this I ran the light smoke. In reality, the car in the movie was only half tinted, so the back half of the car was tinted. We really can't get that in GTA, so to get as close as possible to that, the light smoke is the way to go. So yeah, boys, that's pretty much everything you'll need to recreate Sean's Tokyo Drift Mitsubishi Evolution. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and found the video helpful and informative. Leave any other suggestions for other builds you'd like to see in the comments down below, and I will see you guys in the next video.